think being able to make a very rational analysis of what's happening, be in control of your emotions. And that's, I think, one of the hardest parts of being a portfolio manager.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of CFI's Member Spotlight podcast. This is a very special one. I've probably been waiting for this one for 5 years, and it's because we have a very special guest today, Jorge Marques.
Thank you so much for having me, Mion. I'm very excited too. A little nervous, why I'm excited.
But I'm so excited to have George here because I've pretty much been waiting to meet George for like 5 years. George is one of the original CFI employees from way back when CFI was just a dream. We were building up our website. CFI was being kind of founded in the WeWork shared space. So George is very familiar with CFI, and he is such an instrumental member of building the company that it is today. And he's gone on to do kind of like what we hope that everyone does and gets from CFI. So I'm going to just jump right into it and say, I'm going to get to know George as much as everyone is listening to this right now. I know a little bit about your background just from everything that I've heard through all of our amazing coworkers that I've had. I think it was probably right after you left that I joined. And at that point, I managed Colby and Victor and Katie and Adam and so many other wonderful people. And they've told me such amazing things about you, but I get to finally hear it firsthand. So I'm going to ask you some questions that I might know kind of answers to, but everyone listening, this is going to be a really, really great listen for everyone, because this is kind of the path that we really hope to be able to help people get on if this is what brought you to CFI. So George, one thing that we share in common is, at least for me, a very long time ago, I did the IB diploma. And you did that too. So that's like one of those things where even if you're like 45, people are like, oh my gosh, remember when you did the IB diploma? So back then, where did you get your interest in finance? Did you get it early on? Like some people say that they got it from their parents and growing up, they were working in finance. But did you get it from like high school, or did you get it from university?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And first of all, thanks for all the accolades with CFI. I think you gave me a little much too credit for helping build the company.
No, George is very, very, very humble. Everyone, George is amazing.
But I was very happy to be part of the team. Tim was building like an absolutely amazing company. He was an amazing manager, CEO, founder. So I was really happy when he actually hired me. I've always loved online education, so joining CFI was kind of just very natural for me and just made a lot of sense. And to your question, in terms of finance, my interest in finance, I don't know where exactly when it started. I think I've always like enjoyed, learning about businesses. When I'm on a car ride, I'm looking at, oh, like why do we have so many car shops like lined up together here? Or why do they sell snowboards all in the same one area? And I like looking like, oh, every neighborhood has its own grocery store, and like why did things like happen that way? I do think the IB diploma helped. I think in school I was part of the investment club. There was this one teacher that I really liked and really helped just form me as a character called Robert Cooper Blank. So I just want to give him a shout out. He was. I don't know if he's gonna watch this. I hope he does. But,
you should forward it to him.
I will. But he was our economics a teacher at the time, and he was just one of those. He was actually a big advocate of online learning. He was the one who showed me Khan Academy, and he ran the investment club, and I kind of joined that. And at the time, I thought investing was basically technical analysis, but I really liked what Warren Buffett said. So I was like, oh, I have to understand the business and then figure out if this squiggly chart is going to go up or down. So I think it's kind of started there. I think the IB is an absolutely amazing program. It gives you the chance to explore so many different areas. They had this theory of knowledge, which I thought was very fascinating.
Oh my God, TOK.
TOK, yeah. I really enjoyed that, and but I took mostly, and in my school you got, and at the time it's been quite some a while ago, you get to choose hires and standard level classes,
Hmm.
and you had like a limit of hires in my school, and most of my hires were all very like quant driven, like math, science
Yeah,
stuff.
me too. I did the math one too.
Gosh, math was so hard, and it was. I think that then was like when I kind of started brewing this kind of interest for finance and investing, and I read The Intelligent Investor in high school, and thought that was like, oh, this is so great, and yeah. But I think probably in high school, a long way to answer your question. High school.
But then what did you do your undergraduate degree in? Because it wasn't business.
Yes. So I was actually I didn't know what I wanted to study in university. I knew it was something more sciencey. And one of the reasons I did my high school in Brazil, and in Brazil, when you go to university, you kind of choose your major when you're applying. Uh, so you kind of have to decide, like, oh, I want to become a civil engineer, I want to become a doctor, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life at the time.
Yeah, most people
And
don't when they're like 16, right? 15. It's a tough
yeah,
question.
and in North America, they have this more kind of liberal arts kind of university education, and I went to university at the Faculty of Science, which I liked science, but I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I actually thought I wanted to do astrophysics and astronomy when I first came to Canada, and that was kind of my intention. But I kind of kept everything open. I took a lot of economics courses as well, and just sciences in general. And then after my first year, I kind of realized that to go into this more astrophysics kind of career, I would have to be more academic, or follow a very academic path, which was something I thought I didn't want. So I ended up majoring in math with a minor in economics, and the reason I chose math was just I thought it was very broad and gave me a very like analytical mindset, and gave me the tools to figure out what I wanted to do. So that's kind of where I was very undecided.
And like for those of you listening, if you happen to be in an earlier part of your career and you're still in academics through an undergrad, I'd encourage you to take the path that George took, which is go with what your interests are, and don't feel the pressure that like of course when you apply to university, like here in the United States and Canada, you have to kind of say I'm going to apply to this department and major in this, or you maybe declare it later, but you're already going into faculty. I would just like caveat that with so the smartest people that I worked with when I was in debt capital markets were people that did completely unrelated things for their university degrees. This is my second shout out to Andrew Hainsworth, who is like the most amazing person ever. But he was my managing director when I was at BMO, and he did a degree that was in something completely unrelated at Cambridge. But he's the smartest person I've ever known. Knows every topic under the sun and is just like generally curious. But he ended up working in finance. And so, if anyone is listening and you're majoring in political science or astrophysics or mechanical engineering, these are all degrees that recruiters in finance love. It's just kind of like if you're going to go and be a doctor, right? You can do your undergraduate in science, but you don't have to. Science is kind of helpful, so you just generally know the topics. But there's plenty of doctors that will go in from like an art history background, do the MCAT. So it's like very. Don't think of your academics as limiting if you're listening now.
Yeah, and
But
just to like reinforce that, Mion, I actually, when I was in high school, there was a career fair, and there was this guy from Goldman Sachs, and at the time,
oh,
kind of
the
like it was
ultimate!
Goldman
Everyone
Sachs.
wants to go there.
So, but it was interesting because in Brazil, Goldman Sachs wasn't as, or at the age we were, Goldman Sachs was kind of unknown. So when I went to, and I was like, what on earth is Goldman Sachs, right? And then he told me about it, and I was like, oh, that's very fascinating. And his advice was exactly the same. He said he studied history in, I think it was Duke, and he was just like, whenever you're applying to university, apply to something you find interesting, because if you find interesting, you're going to do well. You're going to learn how to learn, and I think that's the most important part. Is
Mhm.
of university is learning how to learn, because at the end of the day, when you start to work, I think it's going to be very different from university, and you're going to have to learn new languages, new terminology, new skills. And I think learning how to learn is just so, so important.
Yeah, like that's like the whole practice of university is like if you go and do something that you love, you're going to learn how to learn because you naturally want to learn the topic. And that's like the most important thing, like, especially for people working in finance. It sounds like an overused phrase, but what people will very often hear is, I just want to know how you think. I just want you to be able to learn how to learn. And it just sounds very cheesy, but that is genuinely what like recruiters, and if you're being interviewed by managing directors, that's all they want to see. And what they're most interested in is learning about people who have a completely different perspective on things and having them join the team. So it's really fun for people to have people join a capital market, like an equity capital markets desk, but that person has a degree in geography. Like all they want to know is like that person really enjoyed what they did and they clearly know how to learn. And that's like the most that's the biggest skill, which is what you've highlighted, is just learning how to learn. That's all that really matters. Do you by any chance know a company called 3G Capital, the one in
Yes,
Brazil?
yes,
So I used to work for a 3G company. And so I was wondering if you had heard of them because they're supposed to be huge there. They're like the Goldman Sachs of Brazil, apparently.
yeah, yeah. In private equity, I guess. Right.
They're very intense
Yeah,
from working for one
yeah,
of their companies.
yeah. They
But
have. They're known to be very uh, require like very high performing individuals and being very demanding.
they're very, very like cost oriented. That's what I would say.
Yes.
They're very, very like from the little pen that you have on your desk to like the biggest thing on the P&L. But yeah, okay. So after you did your degree in math and economics, I guess that got you exposed to kind of the more business side of things. What led you to your first role? Like, I'd love to hear about what led you from your first role to where you are today, because a lot of our listeners are going to do naturally the thing where they're like, oh, like, I wonder where George worked. And they're going to see your resume. And a lot of people are going to say, like, I want to be George. So,
Well,
yeah, like, how did you kind of fill in that, like, from university to where you are today?
yeah. So in university, I did an internship in Brazil at a public company. It was a forestry company. And I did this rotational internship where I got to spend for 4 months. I think I spent like a week or 10 days in like various departments. And I got to, it was such a fascinating experience. I, got to see how credit works inside a company and how the IT department worked and investor relations, which I liked a lot. I actually participated on an earnings call of the company on the side of the
It's
company, which I
exciting.
thought was really, really interesting. And yeah, I remember just the CEO got like some paper with like data. He asked some questions, wrote something down, and then his opening remarks were just like perfect. And I was like, oh, this guy didn't even prepare. It's so, so impressive. So when I was there, but that experience, I really got to understand how a company works, how different departments interact with each other, the importance of actually HR and having like a good culture. And then when I graduated, I actually got a job at a Vancouver-based tech startup. And at the time, it was, Silicon Valley boom. So, and, apps were the big thing and subscription models were the big thing. And I got a job at a startup, and essentially, I was working directly with the CEO. And he said, this will be a boot camp on how to run a startup. So I was doing everything you can imagine. So I was like setting up their HR system. I was doing paralegal work that I probably shouldn't be doing. And I was reaching out and doing business development work. Uh, and one thing that I was doing a lot was helping him raise money. And so I was building a lot of like pitch decks. I was, researching VCs to see what their holdings were, to see how we could sell the company better to the VCs. And I really enjoyed that. And then I realized like, oh, I like this part. and I decided to take the CFA. I did CFA level one while I was at that startup, and then I came across CFI, and while I was doing actually CFA level one, I was also taking some online courses. I took this MIT online course on like machine learning and data science at the time, and I saw CFA and I was like, oh, this is like finance and online learning, like two things I really enjoy. Like I should apply.
Oh, you saw it
And
on a job posting?
yeah, I think I was on a like it was a LinkedIn post.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I
Yeah,
always
and I
wondered whether you met Tim through UBC. Tim is our original CEO for those of us listening.
yeah, and I think he's still an instructor, right? I'm assuming he's still
Yeah.
like okay. But yeah, so I applied through LinkedIn and got an interview. And honestly, I think I spent my first interview just speaking about how I loved online learning to Tim, how
Oh
Khan
my God. And
Academy
that's
changed
like
my
green lights everywhere for
yeah.
Tim.
And Tim, and I think also the fact that I had like experience at a startup and like working on a small team, and just telling him like, oh, if you have to have me do dishes, I'll do dishes. Like I'll do anything you need. Like we're like a team environment, and I thought that was really good. And yeah, Tim decided to hire me, and I it was an amazing opportunity from there on. Yeah, and then at CFI, again I had a very similar experience, but not as much as the raising money part. But
Yeah, the
learned a lot
BD part is really, really tough. And it's interesting that you got to have such a well-rounded experience from the very beginning. Like through not everyone gets to have that experience where you do a rotational program at a company, right? And
yeah,
especially to be able to dip into investor relations, because investor relations is not an easy space to be in. I find that so a friend of mine that used to work at Goldman Sachs, no, he was at JP Morgan, and he was in traditional investment banking, and he did that for several years. And after he became a director there, he actually moved to their investor relations group, and it's a very common place to see people that are kind of like mid-senior level at an investment bank transition into. But it's not a space where I find a lot of rotational programs put people through, because it is a bit more rigorous, it is a bit more stressful. But between that and then being able to experience being at a startup, that gives you a really wide lens to be able to assess what you want to do. I personally haven't even been part of a company where you're actively doing fundraising, where you have to approach people and to be able to understand the nuances of, okay, what does it look like when we take on these, like, venture cap partners? What does it look like from a financial reporting perspective? What does it make our equity look like? There's a lot of things that you've gotten exposure to very early on, and you probably got to experience that a little bit more with Tim, because then it was such a small group at the time and you're kind of the right hand to everyone.
yeah, yeah. And it was quite interesting at the startup because even though they were like a small early stage startup, they had kind of like financial instruments I had to learn about, like what's a debt convertible and why did they choose to do that? And I was like, okay, how does that impact the cap table? And I was having to kind of self-teach all these things because obviously my degree was not in finance. So yeah, a lot of finance I learned hands-on.
And like basically for everyone listening, everything that George is saying is basically what you want to be presenting in an interview and what people look for. Because, for example, just the curiosity, right? The idea of like, okay, like what is convertible debt? Like, what is a cap table? How is it? Okay, it's great. That's a cap table. How's that going to change? Like, what are those waterfall calculations that are coming up from these VC investors? Like, that's the type of curiosity that we're always talking about when we do, for example, at CFI. For those of you listening, if you've listened to one of our interview prep series, that's a very common phrase that you hear from recruiters and people generally, is that they ask you to be curious. Something that George brought up that I thought was interesting earlier was when you're just curious about like how businesses are formed, for example. I remember when I was in DCM, I covered corporate investment grade, and that's when REIT issuers were fundraising a lot. They were tapping debt markets all the time. And I remember when I was looking into their business, I thought it was fascinating the decisions that go into like buying property, for example. there was I probably won't mention the name, but one of the major REITs are like, when we do analysis of where we want to set up, for example, our next giant multiplex kind of property where it'll be a bit of a strip mall. There'll be a grocery store, there'll be retail, there'll be like liquor stores, all of these things. Are like, we want to make sure that you can get off a major highway and that you're going to be doing a right turn, that like it's going with the grain of traffic. There's like a path of least resistance. You do a right turn into the plex. It's got everything that you need. And when you leave, you can also leave with a right turn. Like there's like all sorts of bizarre things that you just never considered. But the idea that little things like that are like interesting to you, make it so that your journey is additive. So you go from the place where you do the rotation, you're like, oh my God, this is really interesting. And then you go to a startup where you are kind of in a place where you're going to be doing anything that you don't know, basically. When you're at a startup and you're like a CEO's right hand, basically everything is something that you don't know how to do, especially as a new grad. And the fact that you find that fun and interesting and stimulating is like, that is what it takes to succeed, because there's going to be so many things where you are either uncomfortable doing it or you just don't know how to do it. And the fact that you're just excited by that is such a great demonstration to everyone that's a member of CFI of like how success happens. So I want to touch on like after CFI, this is why I think you're such a great example of what we hope that people get out of CFI. You're a portfolio manager now.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about what made you make the switch? Like, did you kind of feel like there was a right time in your career where you were saying like, okay, like, I've got a lot of exposure to different things I've done. And like, I would love to be like, did you at any point say at CFI, I want to be working in capital markets? Like, I want to be a portfolio manager. And like, tell us what made you have that realization, and how have you been able to get to where you are today?
Yeah. So then when I was at CFI, working under Tim, and the company was growing quite a bit. When I joined, I think it was like employee 6 or something. Like I was trying to remember who was there when I joined. I think I remembered 5 people. And then we were at WeWork, and then we moved to our own room at WeWork, and we moved to our own office, and the company was growing really rapidly. And at the same time, I continued studying for the CFA. I did CFA level 2. And I was
That's a
also
hard level
taking,
to be doing, especially at a startup.
yeah, and it was really interesting because I'd go to like on Saturdays and Sundays to study at WeWork at the office.
Oh yes, it's
And
like always there. You're always at WeWork.
always there, yeah. And but Tim would come in on Saturday like randomly and be like, "Oh, you're studying here," like, and then he would just do some work as well. So like he also had that very big passion, and I think why the company was so successful. But yeah, and then I was also taking the FMVA, working on the courses, and I think like the CFA plus the FMVA. I think the CFA is very broad and very theoretical, and very widely recognized, great certification. And the FMVA really gave me like more like polished technical skills that I didn't have from university, especially on financial modeling. Like I was pretty comfortable with Excel and some programming that I had done before. So the uh, way to think about how to build things on Excel, I was good, but I didn't know what a DCF was. I didn't know obviously what the CFA, I was learning it as well, but I didn't exactly know all the financial terms. And I think the FMBA gave me that kind of toolkit. And then my decision to leave the company was a really, really hard one because I I really loved working there. Like I loved everyone who was there. I loved the product. And my decision but when I look kind of forward to my career, I saw that for me to really grow at CFI, I maybe would have to be doing more podcasts. I was have to do maybe become an instructor or something like that. And I just didn't see my skill set really fit with that. And again, I was at the CFA job board, and this financial analyst position came up. And I just said like I'm just gonna apply and see what happens. And I wasn't even looking for a job. I literally just applied to that job, and they called me for an interview, and I think there was a very strong cultural match there. And I got a job as a financial analyst at this investment firm, which I work today, called North Growth Management. And I think what I kind of my pitch to them was, I've spent the last, I don't know, 5 years really honing my theoretical and technical skills. And I think I really want to now apply them somewhere. And North Growth really gave me the ability to apply those technical skills and really hone my toolbox to the style of investing that they like. And
And
then,
you have a very well-rounded skill set in that. I don't think it's super common, especially for people that go into portfolio management directly out of university, um, to have a deep as understanding as you about what it's like to create a business and to value a business. Because the CFA, like you said, is the CFA is very, I think, and you would probably say a similar thing. It's if you're going into a corporate treasury role, to a degree, investor relations, but especially like investment management, portfolio management, the CFA is very, very good. It's very applicable. Everything that you learn through the program is kind of what you do day to day. It's very applicable. Um, if you were to like everyone at the investment bank, I remember when I was there, whether you're an M&A or an industry group, everyone takes a CFA because everyone has it and you have to have it too. Um, but it is very, very relevant knowledge for people that are in, especially portfolio management. But not a lot of people that have that designation have so much familiarity with almost kind of like a PE side. And you've gotten that from not only just taking the FMVA, but helping kind of build it as well, right? But for everyone that's kind of aspiring to be George, what do you do? Like, what did you do as a financial analyst, and how did you grow to being a portfolio manager today? Because that's going to be, for a lot of people listening, that's probably what they have on like their vision board. Like, I am going to be hired as an investment analyst or financial analyst somewhere, but my ultimate goal is to be a PM. Like, how was that learning path for you, and what is the kind of like a day to day look like for you today versus what it was when you first joined North Growth?
so what financial analyst, essentially my job was to research companies. And obviously, that was the main focus. But there was a lot of admin work that I was doing as well, sitting in investment meetings to, just learn what the other portfolio managers were thinking and like how their investment style was. So they were really molding my investment style to fit the firms. And essentially, my job was they would give me a business and be like, okay, research this business and present it. And so I remember the first business I got was a flooring company. So I had to learn about floors. And, like I am a curious person. And I was just like, oh, wow, like there's so many different types of floors. And like the person who's buying the floor, like, will want this and that. And why is vinyl better than wood and things like that? And I was like, just learned everything about floors. And I was trying to like, uh, show that I was very keen. So I spent the whole weekend like researching and like building the model for the company. And then so I spent like a week and the weekend researching it. And on Monday I was like, okay, I'm ready to present.
I'm ready
My
to talk
pitch was
floors.
yeah, floors. My pitch was terrible. And I was like, I don't think this is a good investment. And they were like, yeah, no, we agree. And I was like, oh wow. I spent like all this time learning about this industry and the companies and the players. And then they also said like, you don't have to cram your research. Like it's much more important that we make the right decision than making the decision quickly. And I thought that was actually a very valuable lesson because I think, when you're under pressure, you sometimes let emotions kind of bias you. And I was like, and I had this very urge to say, like, I've done all this research, like, this has to be a good investment. But at the end of the day, I think the better decision was not to invest. But yeah, so as a financial analyst, it was a lot about researching the companies. And then when I, finished the CFA and transitioned to a more to the portfolio management role, I think the biggest difference is I still do a lot of that research myself, uh, but now I also have more say on the current portfolio holdings, and we have to make a lot of decisions in terms of weight management, which is so important, and diversification, and monitoring ideas that are inside the portfolio already. So
So a little bit of
yeah,
portfolio construction.
yeah, portfolio construction, portfolio monitoring. We have 80 holdings, which and we are three portfolio managers, and we are all generalists. We're not very specialist, which means we look at everything. But yeah, so we monitor a lot the current holdings as well. Kind of just builds up on the previous role.
And so for those of us listening that have on a vision board, like I want to be a PM one day, what does your kind of typical day to day look like?
Yeah, so I wake up and kind of catch up with the news, see if there was anything that will affect the specific company that we hold. So, for example, we hold certain healthcare names. Let's say a drug is approved. That's a very material moving information because now something that a product that wasn't revenue generating is getting closer to be revenue generating. So we will check if there's news on. I'll check if there's news on the companies. Then read up on what's happened, if there was any macro news that impacts overall any of the portfolio holdings. Then I'll typically head to the office, and at the office, if there's anything we need to discuss, we'll discuss. And then I'll go into research, do a lot of research new ideas, research markets, take meetings with companies to learn about new companies, meetings with investment bank analysts who will tell us about certain sectors. Sometimes we attend conferences, mostly virtual, but conferences again to learn about new ideas. And then, so a lot of learning, which I think is one of the reasons I like the job a lot. We also have a lot of, so this is a little technical, but our firm does our own valuation. So our portfolio management team does the valuation of the mutual fund daily. So we take care of that, attend to client meetings and client requests. Um, yeah, I think that sums it up. But yeah,
And then what would you say are three, it doesn't have to be three, but just a couple of key qualities that you think make someone successful in a portfolio management role? Because like what we said before was that when you go to, for example, university for an undergraduate degree, pick whatever you like most, because the chances are you're going to perform the best at what you like to do. Because, for example, when you were studying for the CFA on like a weekend, or when Tim was dropping by the office on a weekend, this is Tim pre his children. It's like his genuine interest that propels you to do that, right? And so with someone that's with career, it's a little bit different because in academics, you're paying money to learn and like hopefully building yourself up. But with careers, it's like they're paying you, and you can't you can't have such a disparate career path over time, because then that kind of leads to less significant progress. But what would you say are the key kind of qualities that make someone successful in a portfolio management role from what you've seen so far?
yeah. So just before it was Tim with a newborn. So I think that's
Tim with a newborn.
But I think in terms of qualities, I think curiosity and hard work. I think that's really important. I think discipline, again, just hard work as well, I guess. Uh, because as I said, like, I was learning about flooring, and then the next week I was learning about semiconductors. And then I was, reading Chip War to understand the geopolitics of how the semiconductor market works. And so I think like having this innate curiosity of just enjoying to learn random things is very important. Um, I think having having, how do I say this? Kind of being okay with being wrong and learning from your mistakes, I think is very important because you like the market is really tough and you are constantly being like, you wake up and you're daily saying like, if you invest in something and it goes down, you're like, oh, am I
Constant feedback.
constant feedback, and it's constant, like kind of like, and I think being able to make a very rational analysis of what's happening and being like, I think that's very important. So I guess be in control of your emotions, and that's, I think, one of the hardest parts of being a portfolio manager. And so curiosity, hard work, in control of your emotions, and being open to doing things. I always I get a lot of students reaching out asking me of what I recommend. And I think, nowadays, and I guess I'm kind of going away from your question a bit, but like analyze companies yourself, like on your free time, you want to like learn how to analyze a company, write a Substack about it, write investment pitches. I think as you do more, you get better at it. And I think I think that's the best way to really improve your skills.
So, I can't think of a better way to just wrap up that podcast because this is our key nuggets of information for anyone that has on their vision board to be a portfolio manager, because it's a huge aspirational goal for everyone. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast because I can't think of a more informative one that we've had. And to be able to learn it from someone that has been so instrumental behind CFI, George is the best example of what we want to provide for people that are at CFI. So thank you everyone for joining us for a most special episode of Member Spotlight. And maybe we'll touch base with George again in like a year or two, see where he is. Maybe he's gonna be the head of an investment fund. But for now, everyone,
having me, and if anyone wants to reach out, reach out on LinkedIn. I'm always open to help students, and
amazing
to have talk here.
Thank you so much for joining us, George.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. FinPod is brought to you by Corporate Finance Institute, the #1 rated online provider of finance and banking training, certifications, and productivity tools.